I don't know. I don't know what to say in the beginning. Hello. So, this is our first episode of this podcast that we're just gonna, talk about gaming, and hopefully some people out there happen to like it and listen to us and encourage us and not hate us. But your opinions we won't care about. So that's the beauty of gaming, isn't it? So anyways, my name is Josh, if you did not know that. And this will be done by me and my brother Liam. We have both been gamers our entire lives. From early on as Nintendo to here we are at PS4s and Wii U's and those other stuff that people happen to play games on. So, yeah, we're just gonna kind of give you guys a quick history lesson on who we are and what we are into, and yeah. So, we started off with Nintendo, like most young kids, young strapping lads, with our Duck Hunts and our Marios.
Mega Man 2.
Oh, hell yeah. Lots of Mega Man, which I'm sure I will end up putting as our backdrop for music on here. And yeah, we went from Nintendo, and I remember getting our Super Nintendo for Christmas and playing the ever-living shit out of that system.
Oh, yeah.
I would even dare say to this day that it is my favorite system because of nostalgia with Final Fantasy games and, all the plethora of amazing RPGs that came out.
That and platformers and brawlers.
Oh, absolutely.
That was back in the day when you would scroll across the screen and punch random mobs of random enemies that all look the same.
Same sprites, different colored shirts.
Yep. You knew you were in for a boss fight when the dude that was normally wearing a red shirt is now wearing a blue shirt.
And they really became hardcore when in the first level you'd have that slightly bigger thug in a red shirt, but then later in the game you would see the same guy but in a blue shirt, and you'd fight two of them. And suddenly that boss in the first level is badass and a normal enemy.
It's like Double Dragon. You'd sit there and fight the same stuff over and over throughout the game. But then when you saw two of those big guys, you knew you were in for a fight.
Oh, no joke. So, but yeah, we went from Super Nintendo and had a quantum leap to PlayStation.
Yep.
We didn't really have the rupees back then to get a Nintendo 64 or any of the Sega systems.
I think it was in a large part we were so anti-Sega back in the day, and Dad remembers it. Dad remembers that we were just completely against Sega and the Sonic franchise because we just had this weird hate for it. Kind of like Xbox nowadays.
Absolutely.
But we had looked at the systems, and it was Super Nintendo. Super Nintendo went to Nintendo 64, and the stuff that was for Nintendo 64 looked kind of interesting. But then when you looked at PlayStation, and it was like, here's the games for PlayStation. You got Twisted Metal, Jet Moto, Resident Evil, Tomb Raider, and there's some talk about a future of Final Fantasy VII coming over to PlayStation 1. And it's just like, yeah, we want to try that out, not playing another Mario game.
And unless my memory is incorrect here, at the time we actually had some friends of ours who lived close to us. We had a video game club, and I remember at the time that we were getting Game Informer, I think it was, and
this was back when Game Informer didn't even have a cover.
That's true.
You'd get it from FuncoLand, and it was like a free issue. You would grab it from FuncoLand, and it didn't even have a cover to it.
There's another thing that says, with age, FuncoLand. Yeah, going in there and grabbing their pricing guide and just looking at all these games, like, oh my god, Dragon Ball Z Ultimate Battle 22 is $100.
Yeah, and highlighting everything, and then came Christmas or birthday. What do you guys want? And it's like this, and just throw them the newspaper.
And we'd get so excited to get the next one to see how much the prices had changed. But I remember said magazine, we were looking through it, and I'll never forget, and I'm sure you still have this, the big article they had for Final Fantasy VII. And I just remember us looking at the in there, like, oh, looking at all these characters, like, oh, who's that guy with the crazy spiky hair and the big ass sword? And like, we were just amazed by this game. And Liam got a job at a gas station. It was his first job.
Actually, no. For the PlayStation 1, I remember I was babysitting. That's how I got the PS1.
What? Oh, you got the PS2 with the gas station.
PlayStation 1, I had babysat for our mom's friend, and then I was also working on that farm.
That's right.
And then for the PS2, I went in and I was trying to get a job all over the place, couldn't get one, go to a gas station, and all I did was ask for an application, and apparently the guy that I had asked for it was the manager, and he was gay, and for whatever odd reason he thought it was cute even though I was underage. So he gave me the job, and it's like, oh, okay, that's cool, not gonna complain.
Right? Yeah. I remember that was a fun time, because like when you originally got the PlayStation, you would not let anybody touch it.
I think that is always my thing, because of how much the PlayStations are each year, or not each year, but at every release. With them costing so much, and it's like new equipment, I'm so paranoid of other people just, I don't know, just somehow like touching the casing to a system and it'll explode or something. I don't know.
Well, and it's fair enough. I mean, you put all that money into these systems, and not to try and jump ahead here, but I remember when you bought the PlayStation 3, you didn't even open it for a considerable amount of time, and I remember you coming over and you brought the system in its box, and I had friends that wanted you to open it up, and you were just like, fuck off, get away from me. And like,
I wanted to open it when it felt right to me, and I didn't want to open it because of other people. But I just remember that because of how much the original PS3 was, it was over $600 for me, and I was so paranoid that something would happen, and I didn't want anything to break it. I was so nervous, and like, oh my god, what if somebody like breathed wrong or something, and all of a sudden
gonna damage the hardware.
So I was very nervous, like taking it out of its box and wiring it all up. But once it was all set up, it was really amazing to me, of course, because big PlayStation fan. So every single time I've hit that power button, I've always been happy. It's like that borderline tears moment, like, oh my god, I'm so happy and proud.
Oh, I can definitely attest to that. Especially for me, it was this last one, getting my PlayStation 4 and walking in the door, and just I was so excited, and I set it down, and as soon as I just opened it up, like the lid, it hit me. I'm like, oh my god, because for me, my PlayStation 1, I got it for Christmas, and I can't remember what year it was, but it was a used system. Which, for the record, it doesn't bother me getting a used system, but because also with my PlayStation 2, I got that used, and well, I guess no, the PlayStation 3, no, we did buy that used.
Yeah, you had for your PS3, you had that and a 360, I believe, and you had said that you sold the PS3 because there was nothing that was catching your interest.
That is true.
So you had sold it, and then a while later, I remember I was talking to you, I was like, no, man, you gotta get PS3, you gotta get Red Dead Redemption. And I was giving you a list of games to play, and you're like, well, I don't know. And finally, I remember once you started playing Red Dead Redemption, you were just like, dude.
Well, and more than that, also, there was another game, well, 2 game series that you showed me. We'll get to that. But
yeah,
it was used. And then so the PlayStation 4 and also these systems, it was considerable amount of time after they came out that I got them. Now the PlayStation 4, it took me, gosh, what was it, a month or 2? And I finally had the money for it, and so like opening it up was such a big thing for me. But we also both have owned PlayStation or PSPs, which yeah, and then we now both have the Vitas. Nintendo though, like we never really walked away from those. I like Nintendo yet for what it is, you know, for nostalgia mostly, but the Super Nintendo is still, in my opinion, the best system that Nintendo has put out.
If I had to say my favorite system, it would probably be PS3, and the reason for it is just because of the fact that you can access the PlayStation Network and play PS1 and PS2 games.
Oh, absolutely.
So, kind of a cheap way to go about it, but I mean, it is there, so.
No, there's nothing wrong with that, and that's something that I, like most people, imagine I'm dreaming for the day that Sony makes some kind of a application that you can add to the systems that make your systems be able to play those older games. That would be sweet because, you know, some people don't have their systems anymore, and you know, they do want to revisit Final Fantasy VII or, you know, some other game from like PS2, and unless they have that system, they really can't play it unless they, you know, go the illegal route and get an emulator and ROMs, but it's just not the same.
Right.
And granted, yes, they are making some kind of strides towards that by having the PlayStation Now, but
the pricing on there is rather jacked.
I completely agree.
I think that's definitely a topic for another time. I'm a big PlayStation supporter. I put a lot of my life into keeping up with PlayStation news, PlayStation announcements. At times it's a little bit frustrating just because of the fact that there's so much going on and I don't have like an outlet for it. And at times because of the progression of age, there's a lot less people within age groups that are as adamant with gaming as a lot of us within our friend circle. So it can be a little bit hard being into something that you're seeing less and less of your friends being into still. You know, it's like you wake up and you're wanting to play games, and then meanwhile you look at all of your friends that are around the similar age and they're wanting to, you know, like do stuff with family, got work, got college. They just, or, you know, I gotta change the wood on the patio.
Oh yeah, and that's something that, you know, with growing up and age, and you know, that definitely affects, you know, all of us. I mean, myself, I mean, you know, I have work, you know, I have a job and I have a kid and stuff, so it sometimes can be very, very hard to be a gamer and trying to stay up to date with everything that's going on in the gaming universe, you know, when, you know, oh, well, I gotta make dinner.
Let's see that, like I was saying though, that's my life. I'm definitely the PlayStation fan. I'm not as much of a dick as a lot of the people I've seen on forums and other communities where it's like, oh, you have a differing opinion, I'm gonna throw out all these negative insults. I personally do not care if somebody plays Xbox, PC, or Nintendo.
PC Master Race.
I'll have my opinions and I'll joke around with it, but I can still respect somebody if they're playing BioShock regardless of the system. I mean, they're still playing BioShock. I mean,
I absolutely agree, and you know, I'm right there with you. I mean, I've given people shit before about, oh yeah, oh, you got an Xbox, yeah, you suck. You know, we all do that, but you know, at the end of the day, I really do not care what system you're playing on. I'm a gamer, and so I just like playing video games. Now, I do prefer the PlayStation controller over any controller. And so that's the reason why I ultimately did pick the PlayStation 4 over the Xbox One. You know, and plus I've owned every single Sony system. In all fairness, I've also owned the original Xbox and a 360. And there are amazing games for those systems, you know, that are, you know, Xbox exclusives. I have done my time in Halo, specifically Halo 2. But I didn't really become a big fan of those first-person shooter type games until you brought me back to the PS3 with two colossal games, Borderlands and BioShock.
I think a lot of the shooters out there can be a lot of fun and interesting. You just have to know more details about it, because unfortunately a lot of the big news outlets for game wise, they don't really talk about what else is out there outside of like Call of Duty type stuff. You know, you gotta have AAAs in there and gotta hype up all the other games, but you got the ones that just kind of barely touch the radar and nobody really knows about them, or there's just not enough like hype behind a game. Red Dead Redemption, I don't even remember reading much hype for it or anything else. I remember seeing some of the commercials, but I don't think it did a good job of talking
really
about,
selling it.
Yeah, it's like, here's a Western game. You're like, okay, what about it? And all they did was show cinematics from it, and it's like, okay, well, okay, it's a shooter, sort of, I guess.
You know, and with a game like that too, you almost have to have that word of mouth, because if you have someone describe it to you, just what the game is, it does sound kind of dull. Like, oh, well, yeah, you're this guy who, kind of got screwed over, and so you're trying to clear your name, and it's a Western, and you're like, ah. But then if you have someone like, okay, dude, John Marston is one of the most awesome characters that you will ever see in a game. Without a shadow of doubt, the best game made by Rockstar.
Right.
Which is a huge opinion, but I have to say that really that blows almost any GTA game out of the water, in my opinion, except for Vice City. I really did like Vice City.
Well, yeah, Vice City was pretty good. I don't think it's held up well against the test of time, but a lot of games haven't, to be fair.
Right. But getting kind of back on track here. But yeah, we've both gone back and we've experienced those other systems. Like we both have had Game Boys and the different derivatives of that system over the years, and I think that we would both agree that we're mainly console gamers. I have been more into PC gaming with some of the MMOs. Like I admit I spent a couple of years or more in Azeroth. So yeah, go Alliance. But so we've definitely have spanned ourselves across the entire gaming universe and have experienced the different systems. Now, when it comes down to the types of games, though, we both are, without a shadow of doubt, into RPGs.
Right.
That is definitely a genre that we have gone and we've played and played and played again, and specifically the Japanese RPGs. Like we said, and anybody who knows us knows that we're huge into Final Fantasy, Lunar.
Well, there's quite a few of them that are out there, and point is that we like RPGs. So games with a story to it are generally more appealing than something that's just. Yeah, I mean, Call of Duty does have its perks to it. I don't deny that, but it's essentially not a game that I really care to drop the money for.
No, especially not brand new. But I mean, other games. For me specifically, I am a avid fan of the Metal Gear series. I've played every single one of them, and I don't even believe Hideo Kojima could do wrong. He can make a game about taking a poop, and it would probably be the best story that you've ever seen in a game. And probably my love for RPGs is the reason why I've really clung on to the Metal Gear franchise, because I just truly believe Hideo Kojima is one of the best storytellers out there. And it makes me personally very excited to play the Silent Hills game when that comes out.
Right.
Because and that's another thing. We've also
well, I think a person needs to dabble in other genres. It's just kind of like music, you can't sit there and say that you're a fan of music if you only listen to pop metal country. You have to kind of like
branch. Well, you can't truly appreciate all the different styles that there are out there unless you really kind of stick your hand into it. Right. I mean, like fighting games. Over the years, we have put our time into Street Fighter, Tekken, and even Bushido Blade, which was for the PS1. I know that we've put hours and hours and hours into it, but it's not something that I would regularly jump to. Given the choice to play a game, I'm gonna 9 times out of 10 pass over a fighting game.
I think every game out there, it's gonna have its fan base, and even with us, I know that growing up, we did play some sports games. We played Tecmo Super Bowl, and we played a lot of like racing type of games. And even now, it's like every once in a while, it doesn't really bother to dabble into a racing game. Obviously, I'm not gonna jump up and be like, "Oh my God, there's another Madden game this year." But there, every once in a while, there is a shooter game that catches attention, or adventure game, or even fighting game. It just depends on who's making it, the content of it, and a whole bunch of other reasons behind why I should get a game. Blaze Blue and Guilty Gear, for example, are two series that they catch my attention due to the anime designs and because they have story to them. I think those two reasons are like really good reasons to check out the series, as opposed to Tekken. I do love Tekken, but it's not something that I want to drop $60 on.
Well, no, those are the kinds of games that also, unless you are really into mastering every single character in the game, you find a character and you can generally beat the game in about 15 to 20 minutes. I mean, yes, they have done stuff over the years with adding, different, like, oh, if you beat the game with these characters, you unlock this or that. So that there's at least that perk. But for us growing up, like, we played Super Street Fighter Turbo, and there was like, 12 characters or something, and you beat the game with those characters, and that was it.
Well, the reason that people played certain games a lot more than nowadays back then, as opposed to today, is, I mean, obviously, it's just a lot easier to get games nowadays. If you play Street Fighter nowadays, you can only play it for like 2 hours, and then you're like, okay, I'm pretty much done with this whole game. Whereas back in the day, it's like, this is the only game I'm gonna have for like the next couple of months, unless like one of my friends gets a game that I can borrow.
Right. Yeah, and it is so easy to get games, and especially with us being older and being able to drive to the store, and you find a bargain bin and you can pick up a brand new game used for $10 or under. Whereas back then, it was, of course, we didn't have jobs or transportation, but the games are just more readily available now.
Did you want to wrap this up then? Because we're about to hit
30 minutes.
That's like double the time that you had wanted to do.
Oh, no, that's fine. So, this was just kind of a test one, and if this sounds good to us when I end it, because what we're doing here is we're recording on Skype, because we're actually on opposite sides of the country here. So we're recording this all on Skype, and so hopefully, should this sound good, we can have other people come on as guests, and we can do open discussions, and we'll set up certain topics. So just kind of want to give a brief history of who we are and what we're into, and I'm sure more will unfold in time. But if this all sounds awesome, then I'm gonna go ahead and set up some more stuff for us to do. So hopefully, fingers crossed, everything sounds awesome.
I think content-wise, we have plenty to go off. I mean, we kept on getting sidetracked.
Oh, easily, yeah.
But yeah, hopefully it's just the audio part that holds up. And, obviously, hopefully some people are like, hey, this is kind of nifty. Otherwise, if everybody's like, dude, that was so stupid, then be like, oh, never mind.
Well, and I think that with this just being very generic, like, oh, well, this is all about us. People are not going to care maybe so much about that. And if you do, then sweet. But, it's going to be more, I think, exciting once we start getting people on and we can kind of talk about, you know, hey, let's talk about this kick-ass series called BioShock.
And Derek was wanting us to do a segment about Bebe's Kids for Super Nintendo.
What?
Yeah. I told him, I was like, well, I'll run it past him, and we'll see if maybe he wants to, like, play it for a week. And then we talk about Bebe's Kids.
I don't know about that, man. I don't know. We can maybe do a tie-in. I don't know if I want to do a whole show based on that. But well, yeah, we're just gonna go ahead here, and we're gonna close this one out. And like I said, hopefully this sounds awesome and people like it, and we can kind of go forth and have these open discussions and kind of make a cool little show out of it. Even if it's not a lot of people that listen to it, it would be cool just to, you know, have these open discussions and see what kind of shenanigans we can get ourselves into.
All right, so let's close it up then.
All right, we'll see everyone later.
Take care.